Okay, so we'll start with day one. We're just going to start from the beginning of the Orach Hashulchan Orach Chaim Siman Aleph. And my plan is to just learn through inside a little bit a few times a week. And we'll see how well that works, and we'll adjust as we go along. Flexibility is the most important thing. Okay, so he starts off Siman Aleph Sif Aleph. He says Ksiv. There's Pasuk says in Mishlei, Orach Chaim Lamalo Lamaskil. The path of life, Orach Chaim, the path of life is above for or above the maskil, the wise person, the intelligent person, Lema'an sur me Sha'ol mata, so that he can turn away from Sha'ol, from Gehenim, from the grave below. Ubiaru nira. And it seems to me, Rav Yechiel Mechel Epstein says, it seems to me that the explanation of the pasuk is as follows: Ki hamalachim nivru b'sheni. Malachim were created on the second day of creation. Kamavur b'medrash v'chein mavur b'mizmar baruchi nafshi hamikra b'mayim alilosav osa malachav ruchos v'avdalas hamayim haisa b'sheni. Right, so malachim are created on the second day. V'habehemos nivru b'chamishi, and behemos are created on the fifth day. V'hamalachim ovdim es boram ve'en lahem yetzer hara, and malachim who were created on the second day, closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, less ensconced within the experience of tzimtzum, they serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a single-minded way, right? They don't have Shnei Yitzircha, they don't have a Yetzer Hara and a Yetzer Tov. They simply experience the pure Ratzon Hashem and act accordingly, because there is nothing else. There's no choices to be made. There's no alternative, even in the deepest recesses of their own mind. There's no even hint of a possibility of doing anything else. There is simply the operation of the direct, pure Ratzon Hashem, without any hastara, without any confusion. They have no Yetzer Hara. Va'behemos yesh lam Yetzer Hara. And behemos have a Yetzer Hara, ve'en lahem das, but they don't have das. Right? What does it mean that behemos have a Yetzer Hara? So I would suggest maybe that we can take the idea of the Nefesh Bahamis, which is not exactly the same as Yetzer Hara, but the Nefesh Bahamis is the sense of insecurity that we all have, the sense of need that we all have, what the Bala Sulam describes as a ratzon lakabel, a need to receive things. We have a sense of chisaron. There's a sense that I'm not okay, that I need something out of others, out of the world, in order to fulfill the things that I lack. And I'm constantly seeking to find security for myself. It's a sense of the Yetzer Hara, a sense of a need for, and a sense of self-preservation. I need to preserve myself. I need to be makabel rather than be mashpia. Using Rav Kook's idea of the shir pashut kafal meshulash meruba, it's being stuck in a place where I can't even think about myself in an expanded way, because I'm so stuck in my need, in my sense of poverty, and my sense of stuckness, because I'm unable to move beyond my own insecurity and my own lack of wholeness. And so the Yetzer Hara is the part of us that generates anger and resentment and all of the other negative midos and bad decisions that we make, simply because we're trying to provide ourselves with a sense of permanency and self-preservation and security and so on and so forth. So behemos, they have that, right? That's all a behema is. It's an instinct for self-preservation and preservation of the species. Ve'en lahem das. But they have no ability to mediate that through the rest of themselves, through the connection between their instinct, their ruach, their sense of instinctual self-preservation, and any kind of seichel that they might have. And consequently, that means that malachim don't have any schar, don't have any reward for their avoda, because they have no Yetzer Hara. Schar, reward, payment, remuneration is a consequence of deserving it. You have to earn it. And you haven't earned anything, because malachim are purely just agents carrying out the will of the principal without any agency of their own. without any self-agency of their own. So there's no reward to receive because they haven't done anything. They're just robots programmed by the Ratzon Hashem, and they carry out that Ratzon because they can't do anything else. They have no genuine intelligence on their own. They have no genuine will or even a sense of a will on their own. Ula behemos l'shayach onesh, and for behemos, we can't really talk about them receiving onesh, the flip side of schar, acharei she'en lehem das, because they have no das. They're not responsible for their following their own instinct. All they have is instinct. All they have is this sense of instinct and no ability to mediate that instinct through the rest of their experience and connect it to the experience of action, emotion, and intellect. And so they have no das, and therefore they have no responsibility. And if they have no responsibility, they can't be punished because, again, punishment, like schar and onesh, are just two flip sides of the same coin, which means I deserve it. Right? That's one darga in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu interacts with the world, is the interaction of schar va'onesh. You do good things and you receive reward. You do bad things and you receive punishment. There's another darga, of course, which is lamala mischar va'onesh. It's kivsha derachmana in Sifrei Kabbalah, in the Leshem in particular. It's the Or Makif as opposed to the Or Penimei. It's the expression of V'chanosi es asher achon v'richamti es asher arachem, like Hashem says after He forgives Bnei Yisrael for the Chet HaEgel. That darga, that operation is not rational, right? It's not corresponding good for good actions and corresponding punishment for bad actions or harmful actions. Instead, it's I do good for whoever I choose to do good for, and I do bad for whoever I choose to do bad for. I'm merciful on anyone I decide, and I'm kind on anyone I decide, and there doesn't have to be a rhyme or a reason for it, and even if you're not deserving, I'll do that. But in terms of malachim and behemos, we find, he's laying out for us here, we find that malachim and behemos reflect for us the operation of these two normal dargas of schar va'onesh, because well, they don't reflect it. There's an absence of schar va'onesh in behemos and malachim. And this is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu then goes on the sixth day and creates man, human beings. And human beings are created from both of these extremes, both of these extreme ends of the spectrum. On the one hand, a human being experiences and has a neshama that illuminates for a person in order to know their maker, like a malach. Malach is intimately connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu because, and directly and consciously connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the sense that there's only Ratzon Hashem running through the malach, and that is carried out by default. And so there's a string of Ratzon Hashem running through us that's clear and manifest and obvious, through which we can connect to the source of that Ratzon. And in that sense, we're like malachim. Kamashakasev kiner Hashem nishmas adam, that the neshama of a person is a ner of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A ner, it's a thing that is illuminating and providing light to us. And what kind of light? Ner Hashem, the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ratzon Hashem, which is what light and or in Penimius is always a metaphor for. There's the neshama that exists within us, gives us an inherent and internal natural ability to access a sense of the Ratzon Hashem. V'yatzar oso beguf, and at the same time, HaKadosh Baruch Hu also made us with a body, shu chomer av, which is a coarse material, a lowly, coarse, thick material, kebehema, like an animal, lecho v'lishtos v'lishon, that needs to eat, and needs to drink, and needs to sleep, and so on and so forth, that has physical needs of self-preservation, like the behema that has a yetzer, that has a yetzer hara, a need for self-preservation, a drive for self-preservation, and because it has a drive for self-preservation, instinctually, my body has to eat, and it won't let me not eat, and my body has to drink, and it won't let me not drink, and my body has to sleep, and it won't let me not sleep. And as a result of this duality that exists within a person, and really all of creation is always at a duality. Creation starts with a beis, it moves from aleph to beis, which is the greatest symptom and the greatest change, kaviyachol, that could take place, of absolute unity to duality. So the human being, which is a microcosm of creation, mibisari echze elokai, and we can understand the patterns of reality through our own self-awareness of our own structure and our own experience. We too are made up of this duality of malach and behema, of neshama and guf. And because of this, we find ourselves in a constant fight, in a constant battle. Internally, we're constantly in tension with ourselves. Kol yemei chayav, our whole lives. Shahanefesh habahami masiso litavas olam hazeh behema. Because our nefesh bahamis, our instinct for self-preservation, which abstracts us and distracts us away from our awareness of a HaKadosh Baruch Hu, under whom and within whom everything is perfectly fine, exactly the way it is, because it's a reflection of Ratzon Hashem. That gets hidden by the nefesh bahamis, because it gives us a sense of, no, I exist and I am real and I need things. I need to eat, I need to sleep, I need to drink, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to make money, I need to make more money, I need to pay my bills, I need peace and quiet, and so on and so forth. All of that then triggers the Yetzer Hara. V'neshama tahora, and at the same time, there's also the neshama tahora, nilchemes kenegdo, the neshama tahora, which is the ner Hashem, that is fighting against the nefesh bahamis. Umara shelo lakach nivra, and it's telling you all the time, it's revealing to you all the time, right deep down, that I don't exist purely to eat, and I don't exist purely to drink. I have to eat, and I have to drink, and I have to sleep, and this is not why I'm here. I'm here for something more than that. I exist more, I am more than my food, and I am more than my sleep. I am more than my physical needs and my physical wants and my insecurities, and even the satisfaction of my insecurities. There's more after that. And it informs us that we have a bigger purpose, la'avodas habore, to serve, to practice, to engage with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like a malach. Like a malach, meaning to align ourselves with HaKadosh Baruch Hu like a malach. And then, from that perspective of the neshama, even the physical things that we must engage in, like eating and drinking and sleeping, the kavana should then be that I'm doing these things in order to serve my master. This is a very, that's a very classic Musar approach, that the physical things that I do are in and of themselves valuable. It's maybe rooted in Chaim and some parts of Nefesh Chaim, although not other parts of Nefesh Chaim. But it reflects the idea that, like, I have to engage the physical things. The physical things are there, but I have to engage them in a way that utilizes them as a tool for then real avoda. Those are not real avoda. Of course, from a perspective of Chasidus, we would say something different, and this is true even in the Rambam at the end of Mor Nevuchim, where he's quite clear that no, the goal of Dveikus, the goal of relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the goal of avoda is not to use things as a tool for the avoda, right? I eat in order to have strength to daven, or I sleep in order to be awake, in order to learn. That's one approach, and it exists out there, of course, as we know, and it's an approach that, said, right, I go to work, but I go to work in order that I can run back to the base medrash at night. That's one approach. But the other approach is, no, I run to work because the work in and of itself is a form of dveikus, is a form of dveikus I can't get in the base medrash, and that in and of itself is a valuable thing. There, the Bach says this in the Bach's famous comment on Birchas HaTorah, of the entirety of one's daily experience is just an ongoing expression and practice and engagement with Torah. It's not a hechsher for Torah. It's not a preparation for Torah. It's not an emtsai, a means of then engaging in real spirituality. It is real spirituality. V'al zeh nemar, and on this it says, Shivisi Hashem l'negi samid. On this idea of everything then becomes a form of avoda, this is what it says, Shivisi Hashem l'negi samid. I place Hashem constantly and steadily, Shivisi, Hashva. It's settled, it's routine, it's all the time. It's not up and down, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, regardless of what I'm doing, right? It's always dveikus, it's always avoda, tamid. And after a person passes away, and now their vision is not clouded by the nefesh bahamis that saw them as a physical creature and with physical needs that have to be met and physical insecurities that have to be satisfied. then you understand retrospectively how all of your actions have been created and your record, so to speak, is written by you. And then if you went in the proper path and you inherit Gan Eden, which is a limitless, infinite enjoyment and pleasure without limits and without time, spatial limits, temporal limits, etc. Right? It's interesting how he frames it here. Shehu tainug bilti gavul. Right? It's unity with the Ein Sof. It's unity with the Ein Sof. Right? Once I shed the physical body and the physical experience of being a creature of tzimtzum, so now I'm back within the space of bilti gavul, of limitlessness, of Or Ein Sof. V'aleim nemar yervian mideshin beisecha v'nachal adonecha tishakem ki imcha makar Chaim ba'oracha nira or. V'im chas v'shalom lehefich yorish gehenim. And if you do the opposite, and you don't engage in avoda, or you allow the nefesh ba'amis to drive the bus, then unfortunately there's an experience of Gehenim afterwards. Shakol yisuri olam hazeh ke'ein negdo. All of the difficulty and all of the challenge one faces in this world, which is quite a lot, that seems like nothing compared to the experience of Gehenim, whatever exactly that means. V'aleim nemar v'yatzu v'ru b'pagre hanashim haposhim bi kito Lasam lo tamos, v'ashem lo tzechave, v'hayu darom l'chol basar, v'shiva shemos yesh l'gehenim, v'eluhem sha'ol v'avdon v'ershachos, v'ershaon tit hayon, v'tzalmaves, v'eretz hatachtis, v'chein hamisfata b'yitzro nofel sham. And also when we are enticed, when we are seduced by the Yetzer Hara, right, by our sense of insecurity, by our sense of worldliness and materiality, that inevitably means that we have to secure our materiality. That causes us to fall into Gehenim, right? That is an experience of Gehenim in and of itself. If you think about it from a Penimei's perspective, the experience of feeling one's own materiality and being seduced by one's own materiality. I'm a material creature who is desperately in need of food, who's desperately in need of sleep, who's desperately in need of drink, who's desperately in need of companionship, who's desperately in need of clothing and shelter and so on and so forth. And I can't transcend these things. And if I don't have them and I don't have enough of them to feel fully secure, then I'm not okay. That in and of itself is an experience of Gehenim. And no surprise that one then falls into doing all sorts of things in the desperation to try and protect themselves from those things. And the truth is, the Leshem says that's the idea of Onesh. The idea of Onesh is the natural consequence, the natural Ra that's created by the Chaim that a person does when they fall into that. There's a natural experience of pain and suffering when one is stuck in that experience, as opposed to an experience of emunah, where one is perfectly fine and okay however things are. V'zeh Amar Shlomo Orach, and so now he goes back to the pasuk he started with. V'zeh Amar Shlomo Orach Chaim Lamalo Lamaske Laman Sur Mishal Mata. This is what Shlomo HaMelech said in Mishlei when he said Orach Chaim Lamalo Lamaske Laman Sur Mishal Mata Kolomar Ata Ha'adam Hamaskil. You, human being who understand, who are intelligent. Acharesh Yesh La Shnei Derachim. O lases ayin v'lev lamala el haboris baruch v'hi derech hachaim. O lahavit lamata al taivas havehemas. Now that you have these two paths in front of you, and these two paths in front of you are really determined by the two paths that are inside of you, you have these two aspects in you that are informing you and teaching you in your natural instinct, in your natural experience. If you pay attention to what's going on internally, two paths are being taught to you, and two options are being spread out in front of you. Either look up, so to speak, towards your Creator, which is the path of life, which is the path of security, which is a path of comfort, which is a path of trust, which is a path of tranquility and peace in this world. You live, you get to actually live. Oh, lahabit lamatel taivas abahamios. Or you can look downward towards the taivas abahamios, towards the cravings and the needs created by the nefesh ba'ames created by the animal instinct in us of self-preservation, which, like an animal, doesn't let us live. An animal is constantly on autopilot. An animal is constantly alert to the things that are going on around them, is scared, is constantly in trauma mode, so to speak. V'lachein atzava oscha, and therefore I'm going to command you, now that you have these two paths available to you, she'orach hachaim shelcha tia rak lemala. The path of life for you is just what's above. Leman sur mishol mata, and this is what will help you turn away from what is below, from Gehenim, from the grave below. Kolomar, im tabit lamata tipol b'shol. If you focus on what's below, you're going to fall into it. Shehia madrega rishona shel Gehenim, which Shaol is the first madrega of Gehenim, umisham tipol od mata, and from there you fall more and more and more. And just end off with a little bit of a Penimei thought, certainly one grounded in Chassidus. We can say that, maybe what he's saying over here is specifically if you focus, im tabit lemata, if you focus on what's below, if you focus on the nefesh ba'ames, if you focus on the errors and the mistakes, if you focus on the insecurities, as opposed to doubling down on the aseh tov and doubling down in more emunah, more bitachon, more trust, more avoda penimis, so inevitably you end up falling into the thing you're focusing on. If I'm focusing on the negatives and I'm focusing on the insecurities and I'm focusing on what's wrong with me and I'm focusing on my neediness and my poverty, my spiritual poverty, my physical poverty, my material poverty, so to speak, so I'm going to fall into that poverty mindset. And inevitably from there I fall to the first level of Gehenim, and from there to the second, and so on and so forth, because the only way to pull myself out is to focus Orach Chaim Lamala, to focus on what's above, to focus on the Aseh Tov, to focus on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on the path that is above, which is really the path of the Malachim. The path of the Malachim is just pure Elokus, is pure engagement, pure identity, pure hishtavos with HaKadosh Baruch Hu.